Okay, so here's the long story, okay? And well, those packages that you can install by not having sudo started being a thing when Canonical started pushing Ubuntu on the phones. Basically, they created snaps and they simply wanted to do something like Android, that you go to the App Store, you install an application, and that application works in isolation with the rest. So there's less chance that, for example, by having a proprietary software, your system will be compromised, okay? But that's exactly the point. Those packages were created thinking in a single user and thinking on creating proprietary software where you cannot know what those binary programs will do, okay? But in the Libre software, it really doesn't make sense for many reasons. One is because you can, for example, install and uninstall sh, you can see the source code before installing. So there's no point on having an isolated file system that cannot speak to the rest of the system, because you can see that you can look into the software and see that there's nothing malicious there, okay? And in the case of my software, it's simply Bash, you know. Anyone with some experience using Linux will understand more or less what the software is doing, because it's just what they use in the terminal. So there's no point of isolating that. But also, the most important thing is that by doing that, that kind of isolation can work very well for something like a phone, where its application is like a different tool, you know. If you launch Gmail, you use Gmail and that's all. And if you launch, I don't know, the camera, you use the camera and that's all. But on a computer, on a desktop or laptop, that's different, because in Linux all applications collaborate with each other. You call other commands, you call other libraries, you call other codecs. So really having an isolated file system for each application that you launch, I found to be a very bad idea for that reason, because you have to now explicitly tell the package what it can launch, and you cannot do anything different than that. The user cannot do anything different than that when they need it. And also, many times you have to include those programs inside the package itself. So you get having a bigger package than what is needed, because most likely those programs are already in the system. But also, what happens if you don't update so often that software? What happens to those dependencies? Well, basically, if they have bugs or they have exploits, security issues, they won't be updated till that software gets updated. While if you use simply the dependencies that your operating system provides, they are always updated if they have any issue, you know, either a bug or a security issue. So that's what I think that was not a very good idea to have. So I decided to do my own solution for making possible to install software in any operating system that uses Linux. And I created install and uninstall, and what it simply does is just copies the files into the system as they are, and if you unlist and makes a list of what files have been copied, and when you try to delete the program, it simply removes those files. And the way it checks for dependencies is also very simple. It simply looks for a particular file for each dependency, and if that file is present in the system, it assumes that that dependency is installed. That's simple, and it works very well. It has the advantages of those other packages, snaps, Flatpaks, and Appimages, without the downsides, which is all that isolation, that it takes time to launch the applications. The applications are binary, so you have to trust somehow that the publisher of those packages is well intended and they really belong to the software they say, But install and uninstall just launches applications instantly. It installs everything instantly. It works everywhere, and if you want to use that for installing any other software, it is as simple as creating a folder called root and putting everything there, and install and install, just you click on it and it works. It doesn't need any extra configuration, So it's much simpler, much lighter, and it doesn't try to solve those problems that proprietary programs carry with themselves, because in reality it doesn't matter if you are running those programs in a virtual file system. If the software has somehow access to your file system, it can still do things like looking into your documents and your data and sending them to some malicious third party. It doesn't matter how you try to limit it, because in the end you cannot really say what this program is doing, no matter how it is packaged and if it is restricted, because the restrictions are chosen by the same person that made the software, so it really doesn't make sense. It was an attempt to copy Android and iOS, but the people who did that really didn't thought thoroughly about if that makes sense in a desktop or laptop fashion, or if it was the same situation. That's a solution that works very well for phones and for Android in particular and for iOS, but outside of that it doesn't work well, I would say. It also requires time to make those packages and to keep them updated, where with install and uninstall I only have to change the source code and that's all. I don't need to package anything. I don't have to do that, and it still works everywhere. So this is the long story. So basically I created that software for not using the other solution that doesn't require sudo, because I thought that was a bad idea.